The dust kicked up around Olivia Pearson's boots as she stood in the middle of Yuba City's Main Street, her hands trembling not from fear, but from the fury of being dismissed yet again. She had just been thrown out of the 4th boarding house in 2 months, her trunk of books and scientific instruments sitting in a heap behind her, because Mrs. Henderson had caught her dissecting a dead crow to understand its wing structure and declared her possessed by demons. It was 1876, and California was supposed to be progressive, but apparently a woman asking too many questions about the natural world was still considered an abomination. She wiped the sweat from her forehead, her dark hair already escaping its pins in the late afternoon heat, and surveyed her options with a sinking heart. At 22 years old, Olivia had been considered odd her entire life. While other girls in Philadelphia had focused on needlework and piano, she had sneaked into her father's study to read his medical journals. When her parents died of cholera 3 years ago, she had sold everything and moved west, hoping to find a place where her curiosity would not be seen as a character flaw. Instead, she had discovered that judgment followed her everywhere like a shadow. "Miss Pearson, you cannot leave your belongings in the middle of the street." Sheriff Talbot approached her with that mix of pity and exasperation she had come to know well. "It is disrupting commerce." "Where exactly would you suggest I put them, Sheriff?" Olivia asked, unable to keep the edge from her voice. "Since I have been informed that no respectable establishment will house a woman of my unnatural interests," the sheriff shifted uncomfortably. "Perhaps if you would conduct yourself more appropriately for a lady. There is talk that you asked Dr. Morrison about cadaver dissection, that you wanted to know about the internal organs of the human body. It is unseemly." "It is education," Olivia shot back. "How am I to understand the world if I cannot ask questions about it?" Before the sheriff could respond, a deep voice interrupted from behind her. "The lady makes a fair point." Olivia turned to find a tall man watching the exchange with interest. He was clearly a cowboy, dusty from travel, with worn leather chaps and a hat that had seen better days. But it was his face that caught her attention, weathered by sun and wind, with striking blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He appeared to be in his mid-20s, broad-shouldered and lean, with dark brown hair that curled slightly at his collar. "This is none of your concern, stranger," the sheriff said warily. "Maybe not, but I cannot help noticing a woman in distress." The cowboy walked closer, his spurs jangling softly. "Name's Harrison Hayes. I just drove a herd up from Los Angeles, getting ready to head back south." "Couldn't help but overhear your predicament, miss." "Olivia Pearson," she said, studying him carefully for signs of mockery. "And my predicament, as you call it, is that this town believes a woman's brain should remain as empty as a rain barrel in August." To her surprise, Harrison Hayes laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. "I have known plenty of empty rain barrels in my time, Miss Pearson. Cannot say they were particularly good company." "Mr. Hayes, I would appreciate it if you would not encourage her," the sheriff said stiffly. "Miss Pearson needs to learn her place." Something shifted in Harrison's expression, his easy demeanor hardening slightly. "Her place? Last I checked, Sheriff, this was still America. Woman's got a right to think, doesn't she?" The sheriff's face reddened. "A woman's got a right to act like a lady." "Good day to you both." He stalked off, leaving Olivia alone with the stranger. She expected Harrison to tip his hat and leave now that he had made his chivalrous gesture, but instead he bent down and picked up her trunk with surprising ease. "This one yours." "All of it is mine, but you do not need to help me. I am quite capable." Even as she said it, Olivia knew she sounded ungracious, but years of having her hopes raised only to be disappointed had made her wary. Never said you were not capable. Harrison set the trunk back down and met her eyes directly. But seems like you could use a hand all the same. Where are you planning to go? I have not quite determined that yet, Olivia admitted, hating how vulnerable the words made her feel. Perhaps there is a barn or stable that would rent me space. Harrison frowned. You are going to sleep in a stable. You have a better suggestion. Because I am open to ideas, assuming they do not involve apologizing for my interest in the natural sciences or pretending to be something I am not. For a long moment, Harrison studied her, and Olivia had the distinct impression he was making some kind of decision. Finally, he said, my aunt runs a boarding house on the edge of town. She is not like the other landladies around here. She has got her own views about what women should and should not do. I could introduce you, if you are interested. Suspicion warred with hope in Olivia's chest. Why would you help me? You do not even know me. That is true enough, Harrison acknowledged. But I heard what you said to the sheriff about wanting to understand the world. My mama was like that, always asking questions, always wanting to know the why and how of things. It got her judged too, especially by small-minded folks. She passed 5 years back, and I cannot help thinking she would have liked you. He paused, then added, besides, I cannot just leave you sitting here in the dust. Would not be right. There was something in his voice when he spoke of his mother, a tenderness that made Olivia's defenses lower just a fraction. Your aunt will not mind housing a woman who dissects dead animals. Aunt Mabel once spent an entire winter sketching the bones of every creature she could find, trying to understand how they all fit together. I think she will appreciate your scientific curiosity. Harrison picked up the trunk again, this time with clear intention. Come on. Worst that happens, she says no and we figure something else out. Olivia gathered her other bags, her mind spinning with questions. Who was this cowboy who spoke so casually about women's curiosity? Why did he seem so unbothered by the very things that made others recoil? But she followed him down the dusty street, past the general store and the saloon, toward a small white house with a wide porch and flowers growing wild in the yard. A woman emerged before they reached the steps, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 50, with iron-gray hair and sharp eyes that reminded Olivia of a hawk. Harrison Hayes, what trouble are you bringing to my door now? The kind that asks good questions, Aunt Mabel. Harrison set down the trunk and gestured to Olivia. This is Miss Pearson. She has been kicked out of her lodgings for having the audacity to be curious about how things work. Thought you might have room for her. Mabel's eyes swept over Olivia with an assessing gaze. What kind of questions? Olivia straightened her shoulders. All kinds. I want to know how birds fly, how the body heals itself, how plants convert sunlight into growth. I want to understand everything, and I refuse to apologize for it. A slow smile spread across Mabel's face. Well now, that is refreshing. Come inside, girl. We will get you settled. Harrison, bring her things to the blue room upstairs. Relief flooded through Olivia so powerfully her knees went weak. Thank you. I can pay. I have been working as a seamstress and I am quite good with numbers if anyone needs bookkeeping done. We will work out the details, Mabel said, waving a hand dismissively. Right now you look like you need a cool drink and a place to sit down. Come along. As Olivia followed Mabel into the house, she glanced back to see Harrison watching her with an expression she could not quite read. He caught her eye and nodded once, as if to say everything would be all right, then hefted her trunk and started up the stairs. The blue room was small but clean, with a window overlooking the yard and a desk that made Olivia's heart leap with joy. She had not had a proper desk since leaving Philadelphia. Harrison set her trunk down carefully and turned to leave, but Olivia found herself speaking before she could stop herself. Why did you really help me? He paused in the doorway, considering the question. I told you. My mama was like you. But there is more to it than that, I suppose. I have spent most of my life driving cattle, sleeping under the stars, going where the work takes me. I have seen a lot of this country, met all kinds of people. And the thing I have learned is that the folks who ask questions, who really want to understand things, they are rare. Most people are content to just accept what they are told, never looking deeper. That is fine for them, but it makes the world a duller place. So when I see someone like you, standing in the street with your trunk of books and that fire in your eyes, refusing to be quiet, well, he shrugged. Seemed important to help is all. Before Olivia could formulate a response to this unexpected speech, Harrison had tipped his hat and disappeared down the hall. She sat on the edge of the bed, her mind racing. In the space of an hour, she had gone from homeless to settled, all because of a cowboy who believed women should ask questions. It seemed too good to be true, and Olivia's experience had taught her that when something seemed too good to be true, there was usually a catch. But as the days passed, no catch revealed itself. Mabel was everything Harrison had promised, a woman who kept her own counsel and cared not one bit what the rest of Yuba City thought. She had books on botany and geology, sketches of animal anatomy, and journals filled with observations about the natural world. The two women fell into an easy companionship, spending evenings discussing everything from the migration patterns of birds to the composition of soil. Harrison stopped by frequently, always with some excuse. He needed to ask Mabel about supplies for his next cattle drive. He wanted to check that the roof was holding up after the recent rain. He had heard there were coyotes around and wanted to make sure the women were safe. But Olivia noticed that these visits always seemed to stretch longer than necessary, and that Harrison's attention often drifted to her as she sat on the porch with her books and specimens. One evening about 2 weeks after her arrival, Olivia was examining a snakeskin she had found by the river, trying to understand the pattern of scales, when Harrison climbed the porch steps and settled into the chair beside her without invitation. "What are you studying?" he asked, his voice genuinely curious rather than mocking. "The structure of reptile skin," Olivia said, expecting him to make an excuse and leave. Men generally did not like detailed explanations of her work. Instead, Harrison leaned closer. "Can I see?" Surprised, Olivia held out the snakeskin. Harrison took it carefully, turning it over in his hands. "I have seen hundreds of these over the years, never really looked at one proper. The scales overlap like roof shingles." "Exactly," Olivia said, warming to the subject despite herself. "It protects them from injury and helps them move efficiently. And when they shed, the entire skin comes off in one piece, like they are stepping out of an old set of clothes. I have been trying to understand how they manage to do that without damaging the new skin underneath." "Have you figured it out?" "Not entirely. I would need to observe the actual process, and I have not yet found a snake willing to cooperate with my research schedule." She meant it as a joke, but Harrison nodded seriously. "There is a den about 3 miles south of here, near the old Miller place. I came across it last month when I was checking on some stray cattle. Must have been 30 or 40 snakes, all tangled up together. If they have not moved on, you could probably observe them there." Olivia's pulse quickened. "Would you show me where it is, if you want?" "We would need to ride out, though. It is too far to walk, especially in this heat." "I can ride," Olivia assured him. "My father kept horses. I learned when I was young. Tomorrow morning then, before it gets too hot, I will bring an extra horse." Harrison stood to leave, then paused. "Miss Pearson, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why is it so important to you? Understanding all these things, I mean. Most people would be content to just know that snakes shed their skin and leave it at that. Olivia set down the snakeskin, trying to find words for something she had never quite articulated before. Because every question I answer leads to 10 more questions, and those questions make the world bigger, not smaller. When I understand how a snake sheds its skin, I can start to wonder about how other animals grow and change. When I know how birds fly, I can begin to imagine how humans might fly someday. Every bit of knowledge is like a candle in the dark, and the more candles we light, the more we can see. She looked up at him, half expecting to see boredom or confusion. Instead, Harrison was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "That is beautiful," he said quietly, "the way you see the world." Then he was gone, leaving Olivia alone with the snakeskin and a strange fluttering in her chest that had nothing to do with reptilian biology. They rode out the next morning as the sun was just breaking over the horizon, painting the California hills gold and amber. Harrison had brought a gentle mare named Daisy for Olivia, and he rode a big buckskin gelding with a calm temperament. As they left the town behind, Olivia felt something loosen in her chest. Out here, with the wind in her face and the wide open sky above, the judgments and restrictions of civilized society seemed very far away. "You look happy," Harrison observed, and Olivia realized she was smiling. "I suppose I am. I have always preferred the wilderness to towns. There are fewer people to tell you what you should and should not be interested in. And more interesting things to study," Harrison added. "See that?" He pointed to a hawk circling overhead. "That is a red-tailed hawk. You can tell by the color of the tail feathers when it banks. They hunt rodents mostly, can spot a mouse from 100 feet up." "How do you know so much about them?" "Same way you do, I expect. By watching and asking questions. When you spend as much time outdoors as I do, you learn to pay attention to everything. The plants, the animals, the weather. Your life might depend on noticing that the cattle are restless because there is a storm coming, or that a certain kind of grass means water is near. It is not scientific like what you do, but it is a kind of knowledge all the same." Olivia found herself looking at Harrison with new eyes. She had assumed his help was simple kindness, maybe with a dash of attraction, but now she wondered if there was more to it. "You understand," she said slowly. "You actually understand why I need to ask questions." "I do." Harrison met her gaze steadily. "And I think it is a damn shame that anyone would try to stop you." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, and Olivia marveled at how easy it was to be with him. There was no pressure to make small talk or pretend interest in trivial matters. Harrison seemed content to let her think, occasionally pointing out something of interest, but never demanding her attention. When they reached the den, Harrison dismounted and helped Olivia down, his hands strong and sure at her waist. He showed her where the snakes liked to sun themselves on the rocks, explained how they became less active in the heat of the day, and then settled against a boulder to wait while she made her observations. Olivia lost herself in her work, sketching the patterns of the snakes' movements, noting how they interacted with each other and responded to threats. She was aware of Harrison's presence, a steady and reassuring weight in her peripheral vision, but he never interrupted or asked when they would leave. He simply let her work until she was satisfied. It was past noon when Olivia finally packed away her notebook and pencils. "Thank you," she said. "This was exactly what I needed." "My pleasure." Harrison stood and stretched, ready to head back. As they rode toward Yuba City, Olivia found herself talking more freely than she had in years, telling Harrison about her childhood in Philadelphia, her father's medical practice, the way she had felt like an outsider even in her own family. Harrison listened with genuine attention, asking thoughtful questions that showed he was really hearing her. "What about you?" Olivia asked finally. "You know so much about me now, but I know very little about you. Not much to tell, really. I grew up on a ranch outside San Antonio, learned to work cattle from my father. My mama was a school teacher, educated woman like you. She taught me to read and write, made sure I understood that there was more to life than just roping steers. After she died, my father kind of gave up. Sold the ranch, took to drinking. I have been on my own since I was 19, going where the work takes me." "That must have been difficult," Harrison shrugged. "It taught me to rely on myself, and it let me see the country, meet all kinds of people. Could have been worse." "Do you ever want to settle down, have your own ranch?" "Sometimes, but I have not found a reason to stop moving yet." He glanced at her, and there was something in his eyes that made Olivia's heart skip. "Maybe I just have not found the right place, or the right reason." They were approaching Mabel's house when they saw the crowd gathered in the street. Olivia's stomach sank as she recognized several of the town's leading ladies, including Mrs. Henderson, her former landlady. Mabel stood on the porch, arms crossed, facing them down. "What is going on?" Harrison asked sharply, spurring his horse forward. Mrs. Henderson turned as they approached, her face pinched with righteous anger. "There you are, Mr. Hayes. Perhaps you can talk some sense into your aunt. She is harboring a woman of questionable morals and scientific pretensions." "Miss Pearson is my guest," Mabel said firmly, "and she has done nothing wrong." "She has been seen dissecting dead animals," another woman chimed in. "It is unnatural, ungodly." Olivia dismounted, her jaw tight. "I have been studying animal anatomy to better understand the natural world. There is nothing immoral about it. You see," Mrs. Henderson gestured dramatically, "she has no shame. No proper woman would speak so boldly about such matters. We have come to insist that Mrs. Hayes turn her out before she corrupts the other young women of this town with her radical ideas." "I will do no such thing," Mabel snapped. "Olivia has more intelligence in her little finger than the lot of you combined. If you are threatened by a woman who asks questions, that says more about your own insecurities than her character." The crowd began to murmur angrily, and Olivia saw the situation spiraling out of control. Before she could speak, Harrison stepped forward, positioning himself between the women and his aunt. "Ladies, I think you should go home." His voice was calm but carried an edge of steel. "Miss Pearson has broken no laws. She has harmed no one. What she does with her own time is her business, not yours. Mr. Hayes, surely you understand that we are trying to maintain standards in this community," Mrs. Henderson said, her tone turning wheedling. "A woman like Miss Pearson sets a dangerous example." "An example of what? Intelligence, curiosity, independence." Harrison shook his head. "If those things are dangerous, then I hope more women follow her lead. You would speak so lightly of a woman's reputation." Another woman gasped. "I speak lightly of busybodies who have nothing better to do than police other people's behavior," Harrison shot back. "Now I am going to ask you one more time politely. Please leave my aunt's property." There was a long, tense moment where Olivia thought Mrs. Henderson might refuse. But something in Harrison's stance, the quiet authority in his voice, made the women think better of it. They departed in a flurry of indignant murmurs and disapproving glances. When they were gone, Mabel let out a long breath. "Thank you, Harrison, though I fear we have not seen the last of this." "Probably not," Harrison agreed. He turned to Olivia, his expression softening. "Are you all right?" Olivia wanted to say yes, to maintain her usual facade of strength and independence. But looking at Harrison, at the genuine concern in his eyes, she found herself telling the truth instead. "No. I am tired. Tired of defending myself. Tired of being judged for wanting to learn. Sometimes I wonder if it would not be easier to just pretend to be the woman everyone expects me to be. But you would not be happy, Harrison said gently. You would be safe, maybe, but not happy. And that is no way to live. Safety is not nothing, Olivia said, hearing the bitterness in her own voice. Sometimes I think about what my life would be like if I could just be content with embroidery and gossip. No one would call me unnatural. I could find a husband, have children, be respectable. You could, Harrison agreed. But would you respect yourself? The question hit Olivia like a physical blow, cutting through all her rationalizations and fears to the heart of the matter. No, she whispered. I would not. Then that is your answer. Harrison reached out and took her hand, his fingers rough and warm against hers. Olivia, ask me anything. About the world, about nature, about why I believe what I believe. Ask me 1,000 questions, 10,000 questions. I will never tell you to be quiet. I will never make you feel ashamed for wanting to understand things. Because the part of you that asks those questions, that is the best part. That is the part worth protecting. Olivia stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. You mean that? Every word. Harrison's thumb traced a circle on the back of her hand, a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. I have met a lot of people in my travels, Olivia. Most of them were fine enough, good at what they did. But very few of them had that spark you have got, that need to dig deeper and understand more. When I see you working, completely absorbed in figuring out how something works, you shine. And anyone who wants to dim that light is a fool. Harrison. She did not even know what she wanted to say, only that his name felt important on her tongue. I am not a fancy man, Harrison continued. I do not have much education, and I spend most of my time covered in dust and cow manure. But I know enough to recognize something precious when I see it. And you are precious, Olivia. Not despite your questions, but because of them. Mabel cleared her throat gently. I am going inside to make supper. You two take your time. When they were alone, Olivia realized she was still holding Harrison's hand. She should probably let go, should step back and maintain proper distance. Instead, she moved closer. I have spent so much of my life feeling like I had to hide who I really was. Even with people who cared about me, I always felt like I was too much. Too curious, too intense, too difficult. You are not too much, Harrison said fiercely. You are exactly right. How can you be so sure? You have only known me for 2 weeks. Sometimes 2 weeks is enough. Sometimes you just know. Harrison raised their joined hands, pressing her knuckles briefly to his lips. But if you need more time, I have got plenty of that. I am not going anywhere. What about your cattle drive? Your work? I can find work around here for a while. California has plenty of ranches that need hands, and besides... He grinned suddenly, transforming his serious expression into something boyish and charming. I have got a lot to learn about snake skin and bird wings. Going to need a good teacher. Despite everything, Olivia laughed. You are ridiculous. I am practical. If I am going to court you properly, I need to be able to keep up with your conversations. Court me. Olivia's heart was suddenly beating very fast. Is that what you want to do? Harrison's expression turned serious again. More than anything, if you will have me. I know I am not what most women are looking for. I've got no fancy house, no stable income. Just a good horse, a decent reputation, and a belief that you are the most remarkable woman I have ever met. Olivia thought about all the men who had courted her before, back in Philadelphia. They had been respectable, educated, appropriate in every way. And every single one of them had eventually asked her to tone down her interests, to focus more on domestic matters, to be less intense about her scientific pursuits. She had sent them all away, choosing her curiosity over companionship. But Harrison was different. He did not want her to be less. He wanted her to be more. Yes, she said simply. Yes, you can court me. The smile that spread across Harrison's face was like sunrise, bright and full of promise. Really, really. Though I should warn you, I am going to have a lot of questions. Good, Harrison said. I would not want it any other way. Over the following weeks, Olivia discovered what it meant to be courted by a man who truly understood her. Harrison took her on long rides through the countryside, showing her hidden canyons and secret meadows, letting her stop whenever something caught her scientific interest. He brought her specimens he found during his work: a bird's nest woven with horsehair, a piece of quartz shot through with gold, a shed antler from a deer. He listened to her theories and observations with genuine fascination, asking questions that showed he was really thinking about what she said. But more than that, Harrison shared his own knowledge freely. He taught her how to read the weather in the clouds, how to track animals by their prints, how to find water in dry country. He showed her the practical science of survival, the accumulated wisdom of generations of people who had lived close to the land. You see how the leaves on that cottonwood are showing their undersides. Harrison pointed one afternoon as they rested by a stream. Means rain is coming, probably within the day. Why do they do that? Olivia asked immediately. Honestly, I do not know. It is just something I have observed over the years. Harrison looked thoughtful. Maybe the changing air pressure affects them somehow. You are the scientist. What do you think? And they would be off, discussing theories and possibilities. Olivia sketching observations in her notebook while Harrison shared what he had noticed during his years outdoors. It was collaboration in the best sense. Two different kinds of knowledge coming together to create a fuller understanding. The people of Yuba City watched their courtship with varying degrees of disapproval, but Olivia found she cared less and less what they thought. Harrison's steady presence gave her confidence, not because she needed his approval, but because he reminded her that her worth did not depend on the opinions of small-minded people. One evening about a month into their courtship, they were sitting on Mabel's porch watching the sun set when Harrison said, "I got offered a job today." "Oh." Olivia looked up from the book she was reading. "Where?" "Big ranch about 20 miles south of here. They need a foreman, someone to manage the cattle operation year-round. Good pay, permanent position." Harrison paused. "I turned it down." Olivia's stomach clenched. "Why would you do that?" "Because it would mean being gone for days at a time, sleeping out at line camps, not being here in Yuba City. And I am not ready to be away from you that much." "Harrison, you cannot turn down work because of me. Your career is important." "It is. But you are more important." Harrison turned to face her fully. "Olivia, I have spent the last 7 years drifting from job to job, never staying anywhere for long. I told myself it was because I loved the freedom, the adventure. But the truth is, I was drifting because I had not found anything worth staying for. Until now." "That is too much pressure," Olivia protested, even as her heart soared. "What if things do not work out between us? You will have given up a good opportunity for nothing." "Things will work out," Harrison said with complete certainty. "I know it is fast. I know we have only been courting a short time. But Olivia, I am 26 years old. I have seen enough of the world to know what I want, and what I want is a life with you. Wherever that life takes us, whatever it looks like, I want to be by your side. Watching you work, listening to your questions, helping you find answers." Olivia set down her book with shaking hands. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I love you. I am saying that you are the most extraordinary person I have ever met, and I cannot imagine my future without you in it." Harrison took her hands in his. "I am saying that if you will have me, if you will take a chance on a cowboy who smells like horses more often than not, I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to hide your light again." Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes. "You love me." "With everything I have got. Even though I am difficult and strange and obsessed with dead animals." "Because you are difficult and strange and obsessed with dead animals," Harrison corrected gently. "Olivia, those are not flaws. Those are the reasons I fell in love with you." Olivia had never been good at expressing emotions. She was much better with facts and observations, concrete things she could measure and record. But sitting there with Harrison, his hands warm around hers and his eyes full of love, she found the words came easily. "I love you too. I think I have loved you since that first day when you picked up my trunk without asking permission and decided I was worth helping. No one has ever done that for me before. No one has ever just accepted me exactly as I am." "Then we are both lucky," Harrison said. "Because I found you and you found me, and somehow in this whole big country we ended up in the same dusty town at the same moment. The statistical probability of that is actually fascinating," Olivia started, then laughed at herself. "Sorry. You declare your love and I start calculating odds." "Do not apologize. That is who you are." Harrison leaned forward and kissed her, soft and sweet, and Olivia felt something settle in her chest. This was right. This was real. When they pulled apart, Harrison said, "I should probably ask you proper. Olivia Pearson, will you marry me?" "Yes," Olivia said without hesitation, "but on one condition." "Name it." "You have to promise that you will never stop encouraging my questions, even if they seem foolish, even if they make me seem strange to other people. I need to know that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you will still want me to ask about everything." Harrison cupped her face in his hands, his expression solemn. "Olivia, I promise you this. I will never silence your questions. I will never make you feel small for wanting to understand the world. And if anyone else tries to make you feel that way, I will stand between you and them and tell them exactly what I think of people who are afraid of curious women. This is my vow to you, before we even get to the altar. Your mind, your questions, your insatiable need to know why and how, that is sacred to me. I will protect it with everything I have." "Then yes," Olivia said through her tears. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married 6 weeks later in Mabel's parlor with just a handful of guests. The judge who performed the ceremony was an old friend of Mabel's, a man who had known enough unusual women in his life to appreciate another one. Olivia wore a simple blue dress and carried wildflowers Harrison had picked that morning. Harrison wore his best clothes, his hair slicked back and his boots polished, looking nervous and happy and so handsome it made Olivia's breath catch. When the judge asked if anyone objected to the union, Mrs. Henderson stood up from the back of the room where she had not been invited but had shown up anyway. "I object. This woman is unnatural, and this marriage is a mockery of everything a Christian union should be." Before anyone else could respond, Harrison turned to face her. His voice was calm but carried clearly through the room. "Mrs. Henderson, my wife is many things. She is intelligent, curious, brave, and kind. She asks questions that make people uncomfortable because they challenge easy assumptions. She wants to understand the world in all its complexity, not just accept what she is told. If that makes her unnatural, then I am grateful for it. Because natural seems to mean small-minded and scared of anything different. Now, if you are quite finished, I would like to marry this remarkable woman." Mrs. Henderson's face went purple with rage, but she had no response. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her, and the ceremony continued. When Harrison kissed Olivia as his wife, the small gathering cheered. Mabel was crying openly, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. And Olivia, who had spent so much of her life feeling out of place, finally felt like she had come home. They spent their wedding night at a small hotel in Sacramento, a real luxury after weeks of making do. As Olivia stood by the window looking out at the city lights, Harrison came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "Happy," he murmured against her hair. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Olivia admitted. "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is real, that you are real." "I am very real." Harrison turned her in his arms so she faced him. "And I am very lucky. We both are." Olivia reached up to touch his face, marveling at the fact that she could do this now, could touch him freely without worrying about propriety. "I have something I want to ask you." "Ask me anything." "I have been thinking about our future, about where we will live and what we will do, and I have an idea, but I want to know what you think before I get too attached to it. Tell me. What if we started our own ranch? Not a big operation, just something small. Enough cattle or horses to make a living, but with plenty of land. I could set up a proper laboratory, do my research seriously instead of just as a hobby. And you could work with the animals, do what you love. We could build something together, a place where people like me, women who ask too many questions, could come and study without fear of judgment." Harrison was quiet for a moment, and Olivia's heart sank. It was too much, too ambitious. She should have known better than to dream so large. Then Harrison said, "That is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. We could call it a scientific station, make it official. You could publish your findings, maybe even teach other women who want to study natural sciences. I know some land north of here, up in the foothills. It is beautiful country, plenty of water, good grass. The owner has been trying to sell it for years, but the price is too high for most ranchers. Maybe we could work something out." "Really? You think we could actually do this?" "I think if anyone can do it, we can. It will take time and money we do not have yet, and a lot of hard work. But Olivia, I have been working cattle for other people my whole adult life. The idea of building something of our own, something that matters, that sounds like the best thing I can imagine." Over the next year, they made it happen. Harrison took high-paying jobs driving cattle up from Los Angeles to Sacramento, dangerous work that kept him away for weeks at a time but brought in good money. Olivia stayed with Mabel and took every sewing and bookkeeping job she could find, squirreling away every penny. She also began writing up her observations in detailed scientific papers, sending them to universities and scientific journals back east. To her amazement, some of them were published. Her work on the structure of bird wings appeared in a journal of ornithology. Her observations about plant growth in arid climates were included in a botany compendium. She was listed as O. Pearson Hayes to avoid immediate dismissal due to her gender, but she did not care. Her ideas were being taken seriously, and that was what mattered. When Harrison returned from his cattle drives, exhausted and dusty, he would sit with her while she read him the letters from editors and scientists. His pride in her accomplishments was evident and genuine, never tinged with jealousy or resentment that she was becoming known in scientific circles, while he remained an anonymous cowboy. "You are making a name for yourself," he said one evening, holding a letter from a professor at Harvard who wanted to know more about her work on reptilian skin structure. "They are going to figure out you are a woman eventually. I know. And then they will probably dismiss everything I have written." Olivia tried to keep the bitterness from her voice but did not quite succeed. "Maybe. Or maybe by then you will have enough published that they will have to take you seriously regardless." Harrison pulled her into his lap, settling her against his chest. "Either way, I am proud of you. You are doing exactly what you were meant to do." "We are doing it together," Olivia corrected. "None of this would be possible without you working those drives, saving money, believing in me." "Partners," Harrison agreed. "In everything." 18 months after their wedding, they finally had enough money for a down payment on the land Harrison had mentioned. It was 200 acres of rolling hills and oak trees, with a creek that ran year-round and views that stretched for miles. The previous owner, an old prospector who had given up looking for gold, was willing to carry the note at reasonable terms. They moved onto the property in the spring of 1878, living in a tent while Harrison built a small cabin. Olivia helped as much as she could, learning to use a hammer and saw despite having no experience with construction. Her hands got covered in blisters and splinters, but she did not care. This was theirs, built with their own labor and sacrifice. The cabin was simple, just 3 rooms, but Harrison made sure one of them was set up as Olivia's laboratory. He built sturdy tables for her specimens and books, installed good windows for light, even constructed special cabinets with locks to keep her more delicate samples safe from dust and insects. "This is perfect," Olivia breathed when he showed her the finished space. "Harrison, it is absolutely perfect. You can really work here. I know it is not fancy like a university laboratory. It is better than a university laboratory because it is mine, ours." She threw her arms around him. "Thank you. Thank you for understanding how important this is to me." "Always," Harrison promised. "Now, what do you say we start on that ranch part of the plan? I am thinking horses rather than cattle. Easier to manage with just the 2 of us, and there is good money in breeding quality working horses." They started small, with 4 mares and a good stallion Harrison bought from a rancher he had worked for. While Harrison built fences and corrals, Olivia continued her research, now with the freedom to pursue whatever interested her without anyone looking over her shoulder in disapproval. She also started quietly spreading the word that she was willing to teach young women who wanted to learn about science. The first student who showed up was a 16-year-old girl named Sarah from Sacramento, whose parents did not know what to do with a daughter who preferred catching frogs to playing with dolls. Olivia taught her basic taxonomy and observation techniques, and watched the girl blossom with the validation that her interests were valuable. Other students followed, a slow trickle at first, then more as word spread. Not many, never more than 3 or 4 at a time, but each one was hungry for knowledge and grateful for a place where their questions were welcomed rather than silenced. Olivia taught them everything she knew, and learned as much from their fresh perspectives and observations as they learned from her. Harrison treated the students with the same respect he showed Olivia, answering their questions about tracking and horsemanship and survival skills. He became a favorite among the girls, this quiet cowboy who never talked down to them or suggested their interests were inappropriate. "You are good with them," Olivia observed one evening after their students had gone to bed in the small bunkhouse Harrison had built. "You should be a teacher yourself." "I am not smart enough for that. Intelligence comes in many forms," Olivia said firmly. "You know things those girls need to learn, things that are just as important as what I teach them. Practical knowledge, outdoor skills, how to move through the world with confidence. That matters, Harrison." He looked pleased and embarrassed in equal measure. "If you think it is valuable, then I will keep doing it. But Olivia, this is really your project. I am just supporting you." "No. This is our project. I could not do any of this without you, and I do not just mean the money and the labor. I mean your belief in me, your willingness to stand up to anyone who tries to silence curious women. You are teaching these girls something vital, that men can be allies, that not every man will try to diminish them." "That should not be remarkable," Harrison said. "That should just be basic decency." "Should be, but is not. You are remarkable whether you see it or not." 3 years into their marriage, Olivia realized she was pregnant. She was terrified and thrilled in equal measure. Part of her worried that a baby would end her research, would force her back into the traditional role of wife and mother with no room for scientific pursuits. But a larger part of her believed that with Harrison as a partner, she could find a way to balance both. When she told Harrison, he picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down gently as if she might break. "Are you happy about it?" he asked anxiously. "I know we have not talked much about children." "I am happy," Olivia assured him. "Scared but happy. What about you? Over the moon. Terrified but over the moon." Harrison rested his hand on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby, a little person who is half you and half me." "That is extraordinary. What if I am not a good mother? What if I am too focused on my work?" "Then you will be a mother who works, and our child will learn that women can do more than one thing. Olivia, you are not going to suddenly become someone different just because you are having a baby. You will still be you, curious, brilliant, determined, and our child will be lucky to have you." Their son was born in the winter of 1879, after a long and difficult labor that scared Harrison half to death. Olivia, exhausted but elated, held the baby boy and looked up at her husband with tears streaming down her face. "We did it. We made a person." "You did most of the work," Harrison said hoarsely, his own eyes damp. "He is perfect, absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" They named him Henry Hayes, and from the beginning he was a curious child, always watching everything with wide, alert eyes. As he grew, it became clear he had inherited both parents' tendency to ask questions and observe closely. Olivia would find him at age 3 crouched by the creek, watching tadpoles with the same intensity she brought to her own research. Motherhood was harder than Olivia had expected, the constant demands of a small child leaving her exhausted and sometimes frustrated. But Harrison was a true partner, taking Henry on long rides to give Olivia time to work, teaching the boy about horses and cattle while she wrote up her observations. On the days when Olivia felt like she was failing at everything, Harrison would remind her that she was doing something revolutionary, raising a child while also contributing to scientific knowledge, refusing to choose between family and intellectual pursuits. "You are showing him that his mother is a whole person," Harrison would say. "Not just a mother, but a scientist, a teacher, a thinker. That matters." The students kept coming, young women who stayed for a few months or a year, learning everything Olivia could teach them before returning to their lives armed with knowledge and confidence. Some went on to become teachers themselves, passing on what they had learned. Others simply lived their lives with more curiosity and less shame about their interests. Olivia tracked them when she could, collecting their letters, proud of each one who refused to be silenced. When Henry was 5, Olivia's work finally caught the attention of a major scientific institution. A professor from the University of California came to visit their ranch, initially skeptical that, Pearson Hayes could be a woman working out of a cabin in the foothills. He spent 3 days reviewing Olivia's specimens, reading her notes and asking increasingly excited questions. When he left, he promised to recommend her for membership in the California Academy of Sciences. "They will never approve it," Olivia said, trying not to get her hopes up. "Women are not allowed in scientific societies." "Maybe it is time they changed that rule," Harrison said. "You have published more solid research than most of their members. They would be fools not to recognize it." To everyone's surprise, the Academy did approve Olivia's membership, the first woman to be granted that honor. The vote was contentious, with many members objecting strongly, but enough forward-thinking scientists had seen her work to push it through. When the letter arrived, Olivia stood in her laboratory holding it with shaking hands while Harrison read over her shoulder. "You did it," he said, his voice full of wonder. You actually did it. We did it, Olivia corrected. Every word I wrote, every observation I made, that was only possible because you believed in me, because you gave me the space and support and encouragement to keep asking questions. Harrison turned her to face him. Olivia, I want you to understand something. I did not do this for you. I did not make you into a scientist or give you your curiosity. That was always there. That was always you. All I did was refuse to stand in your way. The achievement is yours. But you could have stood in my way, Olivia pointed out. Most men would have. Most men would have expected me to focus entirely on being a wife and mother, would have seen my research as a distraction or an embarrassment. You never did that. You never once made me feel like I had to choose between my family and my work. Because you should not have to choose. No one should. Harrison pulled her close. I am proud of you, Olivia, so incredibly proud, but I am not surprised. I have known since the day I met you that you were destined for remarkable things. That evening, they stood on their porch watching the sun set over the hills they had claimed as their own. Henry was inside with the current student, both of them absorbed in examining a collection of pressed flowers. Everything Olivia had ever dreamed of, everything she had fought for, was right here. The freedom to pursue knowledge, a partner who supported rather than constrained her, a child growing up believing that curiosity was a virtue, and students learning that their questions mattered. Do you remember the first thing you ever said to me? Olivia asked Harrison. Besides your name. I said the lady makes a fair point when you were arguing with the sheriff about asking questions. That is when I knew you were different. You heard me, really heard me from the very beginning. Olivia leaned against him, feeling his strength and warmth. I was so alone before you found me. I thought I would spend my whole life defending my right to be curious. You still have to defend it sometimes, Harrison pointed out. There are still plenty of people who think women should not ask questions. True. But now I have you defending it alongside me, and we are raising a son who will defend it too, who will grow up believing that women's minds are just as valuable as men's. And we are teaching young women to defend themselves, to refuse to be silenced. Olivia turned to look up at her husband. We are changing things, Harrison. Maybe just in small ways, maybe just for a few people, but we are making the world a little bit better. You are making it better, Harrison said. I am just along for the ride. No, you are the reason it is possible. Do you remember what you promised me? That you would never silence my questions. I remember, and I have kept that promise. You have done more than that. You have amplified them. Every time someone tries to make me small, you remind me of my value. Every time I doubt myself, you show me evidence of my accomplishments. You have been my greatest advocate, my fiercest defender, my most enthusiastic supporter, and I love you for it. I love you more now than I did on our wedding day, and I did not think that was possible. Harrison's eyes were bright with emotion. Olivia Hayes, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. Every day I get to wake up next to you, watch you work, listen to your theories and questions and observations. Every day I get to be part of your remarkable life. That is a gift beyond measure. They kissed as the last light faded from the sky. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something extraordinary together. Not just a ranch or a school or a scientific station, but a partnership built on mutual respect and unwavering support. The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and challenges. There were droughts that tested the ranch's resources, winters that were harder than expected, moments when money was tight and worry kept them up at night. But they faced everything together, Harrison's practical skills complementing Olivia's analytical mind, each of them bringing different strengths to their shared problems. Olivia's research continued to gain recognition. She published papers on everything from the water retention strategies of desert plants to the social structures of coyote packs. Some of her work was controversial, challenging accepted scientific theories. But her observations were so meticulously documented, her reasoning so sound, that even skeptics had to take her seriously. When Henry turned 12, he asked if he could help with his mother's research. Olivia set him to observing the horses, documenting their behavior and interactions. To her delight, Henry proved to have inherited her eye for detail and her passion for understanding patterns. He filled notebook after notebook with observations, asking intelligent questions that sometimes led Olivia to reconsider her own theories. "He is just like you," Harrison said with satisfaction one evening, watching Henry sketch a diagram of a horse's skeletal structure. "Got that same need to know how things work." "He is like both of us," Olivia corrected. "He has my curiosity and your patience, my analytical mind and your practical skills. He is the best of what we made together." Harrison pulled her close. "Think we should make another one? Henry could use a sibling, and I would not mind having a little girl with your brains and determination." Olivia laughed. "I am nearly 40 years old, Harrison. That ship has probably sailed." "Maybe, but if it has not, I would not mind another child. Our life is good, Olivia, really good. Seems like we have room to share it with another little person." As it turned out, there was one more surprise left in store for them. When Olivia was 41 and Harrison 45, their daughter arrived, a tiny, fierce creature they named Hannah. Unlike Henry's methodical curiosity, Hannah's was explosive and immediate, demanding answers to everything right now. She drove them to exhaustion and filled their home with even more questions than before. Where do stars come from? Why do horses not have fingers? How do birds know which way is south? Can I dissect that dead mouse the cat brought in? Hannah's questions came rapid fire, barely waiting for answers before moving on to the next one. "She is definitely your daughter," Harrison told Olivia, watching Hannah pester Henry with questions about anatomy while he tried to do his chores. "She is ours," Olivia said firmly, "and I have a feeling she is going to be formidable." The students adored Hannah, this pint-sized whirlwind who embodied everything they were learning to be. Unapologetic, curious, refusing to be told that girls should be quiet and docile. By the time she was 6, Hannah was sitting in on Olivia's lessons, asking questions that sometimes stumped the older students and delighting in being right when she figured something out before they did. Henry, now a young man of 19, had decided to study veterinary medicine, applying the scientific principles his mother taught him to the practical animal work his father knew so well. When he left for school in San Francisco, Olivia cried for an entire day. "He is going to come back," Harrison reminded her gently, "and he is going to be amazing. You gave him that, Olivia. The belief that he could pursue knowledge, that asking questions was the path to understanding. We gave him that," Olivia insisted. "You showed him every day that learning matters, that thinking deeply about things is not weakness but strength. He is who he is because of both of us." The work continued. More students came and went, young women who arrived uncertain and left confident, armed with knowledge and the conviction that their questions mattered. Some brought their own daughters years later, wanting them to learn from Mrs. Hayes just as they had. The ranch became known as a place where curious women were welcome, where asking questions was not just permitted but encouraged. Olivia's scientific reputation continued to grow. By the time she was 50, she had published over 40 papers and had become a respected voice in several fields. Some universities invited her to lecture, though she usually declined, preferring to stay on the ranch with Harrison and their work. When she did speak, she always mentioned her husband, the cowboy who had believed in her when no one else would, who had made everything possible by refusing to silence her questions. Harrison, for his part, had become something of a legend in his own right among the women who passed through their lives. Fathers brought their curious daughters to study with Olivia, hoping the Hayes Ranch would somehow cure them of their unfeminine interests. Instead, they encountered Harrison, who treated intellectual young women with the same respect he showed everyone else, and who modeled for them what a good partnership between equals could look like. Many of those fathers left uncomfortable but thoughtful, forced to reconsider their assumptions about women's capabilities. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Harrison took Olivia on a long ride into the hills, to a meadow they had discovered during their first year on the ranch. It looked much the same as it had then, full of wildflowers and butterflies, with a view that stretched to the distant mountains. 25 years, Harrison said, helping Olivia down from her horse. Seems impossible that it has been that long. And that it has been such a short time, Olivia added. I feel like I was just that desperate woman in the street, being judged for wanting to understand the world. You are not that woman anymore. Well, you are still being judged, Harrison amended with a grin, but you are not desperate. You are established, respected, successful. Because of you. Because you saw value in me when others saw only defiance. Harrison took both her hands in his, looking at her with the same intensity he had shown on the day they met. Olivia, I need you to understand something. You give me too much credit. Yes, I believed in you. Yes, I supported your work, but you would have found a way to do your research with or without me. Maybe it would have been harder, maybe it would have taken longer. But your mind, your curiosity, your determination, those things were unstoppable. I just had the good sense to recognize that and not get in your way. You did more than that, Olivia insisted. You created space for me to thrive. You defended me when others attacked. You took care of our children so I could work, built me a laboratory with your own hands, encouraged every wild idea I ever had. Harrison, you did not just believe in me. You actively made my dreams possible. Because your dreams were worth making possible. Because you are extraordinary and the world needed to see what you could do. Harrison pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. I love you, Olivia Hayes. I have loved you for 25 years and I will love you for 25 more if I am lucky enough to have them. I love you too, more than I can ever properly express. Olivia kissed him, pouring into it all the gratitude and passion and devotion she felt. When they pulled apart, she said, You know what I think about sometimes? That day in the street when Mrs. Henderson threw me out. What would have happened if you had not been there? If you had not stopped to help me? Someone else would have helped eventually, Harrison said. Maybe. Or maybe I would have given up, gone back east, tried to be the woman everyone wanted me to be. Maybe I would have married someone who would have slowly extinguished everything that made me who I am. Olivia shuddered at the thought. You saved me, Harrison, not just that day, but every day since. You saved the part of me that matters most. Then we saved each other, Harrison said. Because I was just drifting before I met you, going through the motions of living without any real purpose. You gave me something to work toward, someone to build a life with. You made me better, Olivia. You made me believe I could be more than just a hired hand. They stood together in the meadow as the sun moved across the sky, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. Their marriage was not perfect. They had argued over the years, disagreed about decisions, frustrated each other with their different approaches to problems. But through it all, the fundamental respect and love had never wavered. Harrison had never once told Olivia to be quiet, to stop asking questions, to make herself smaller. and Olivia had never once taken for granted what a gift that was. The years continued to pass. Henry became a skilled veterinarian and married a teacher who shared his parents' progressive views. Hannah grew into a fierce young woman who announced at 16 that she intended to become a doctor, one of the first female physicians in California, if she had her way. Harrison and Olivia supported both their children's ambitions without reservation, having raised them to believe that curiosity and determination could overcome any obstacle. When Olivia turned 60, the University of California invited her to become their first female professor in the natural sciences department. It was an honor she had never imagined possible, recognition that would cement her legacy and allow her to reach even more students. But she turned it down. "Why?" Harrison asked, genuinely confused. "This is everything you have worked toward: official recognition, a position at a major university, resources you have never had before." "It is," Olivia agreed. "And 20 years ago I would have said yes without hesitation. But Harrison, our work here matters. The students who come to us, the young women who need to see that they can pursue knowledge and still have a full life, a loving partnership, a family. I cannot teach that from a university classroom. I can only teach it by living it. You are sure?" "Because I would support you if you wanted to take the position. We could sell the ranch, move to Berkeley. I am old, but I am not dead yet. I can start over if that is what you want." Olivia took his weathered, capable hands in hers. "What I want is to stay right here with you, doing the work we have built together. The university will find someone else to break their barriers. But what we have created, this place where curious women can come and be themselves, that is unique. That is ours, and I do not want to give it up." Harrison kissed her forehead. "Then we stay. Though I have to say I am relieved, would have missed these hills something fierce if we had moved to the city." They stayed. The ranch continued to operate, now with help from hired hands, as Harrison's body began to show the accumulated wear of decades of hard physical labor. The students continued to come, some now bringing their daughters or granddaughters, creating a generational chain of women who believed in the power of questions. Olivia's work slowed as arthritis made it harder to write and handle delicate specimens, but her mind remained sharp. She turned her attention to training the next generation, working closely with a few exceptional students who showed the dedication and curiosity to carry on her research methods. She wanted to ensure that what she had learned would not die with her, that the knowledge she had fought so hard to gain would be passed on. Harrison, now in his 70s, spent his days working with the horses at a gentler pace, teaching Henry's sons about animal husbandry and the importance of patience and observation. He told them stories about their grandmother's discoveries, making sure they understood that Olivia's work was not just acceptable, but admirable. On a warm evening in the late summer of 1909, Harrison and Olivia sat on their porch watching the sunset, something they had done thousands of times over 33 years of marriage. Hannah was inside with her own children, visiting for a few weeks before returning to her practice in Sacramento. Henry and his family lived just 10 miles away, close enough to help with the ranch but far enough to have their own life. "We did all right, did we not?" Harrison said, reaching for Olivia's hand. "Built a good life, raised good children, helped a lot of young women find their way." "We did better than all right," Olivia said. "We created something that will outlast us, not just the ranch or the students, but the idea itself. The idea that women's questions matter, that curiosity is not a flaw but a gift, that partnerships can be built on mutual respect rather than dominance." "That was all you." "It was us," Olivia corrected firmly. "Always us. Harrison, do you remember what you said to me the day we met? You told me I had a right to think, Such a simple thing, but no one had ever said it to me before. That was the moment I started to believe that maybe I did not have to hide who I was. Maybe there was someone in the world who would accept me as I am. And I was right, Harrison said. You did have a right to think. You had a right to ask every question that popped into that remarkable mind of yours. Still do. Olivia smiled. I have been working on a new theory about migration patterns in songbirds. Would you like to hear it? Always. Ask me anything, Olivia. Tell me everything. I will never get tired of hearing you think out loud. So Olivia explained her theory as the sun set behind the hills, Harrison listening with the same attentive interest he had shown from the very beginning. When she finished, he asked thoughtful questions that made her reconsider parts of her reasoning. They debated possibilities and interpretations, two minds working together to understand the world a little better. Inside, Hannah watched through the window, seeing her parents in their element. She would tell her children later about what she had witnessed. Love that sustained, partnership that empowered, the beauty of two people who had created space for each other to be fully themselves. It was a lesson she carried forward in her own marriage, and one she would make sure her daughters and sons understood. As the stars emerged overhead, Harrison and Olivia remained on the porch, talking about songbirds and weather patterns and the 100 other things that captured their interest. They were both older now, marked by time and hard work and the inevitable toll of years. But the connection between them was as strong as ever, built on a foundation of respect, encouragement, and the simple revolutionary act of letting a curious woman ask all her questions without fear of judgment. "I love you," Olivia said suddenly, interrupting her own explanation of atmospheric pressure. Harrison squeezed her hand. "I love you too, always have, always will. Promise me something, anything. Promise me that if I go first, you will tell everyone who asks that the secret to our marriage was simple. You never tried to silence me. You let me be exactly who I was meant to be. I promise. Though I hope we both have many years left." "Me too. I still have so many questions that need answering." Harrison laughed. "Of course you do, and I will be right here, helping you find those answers for as long as I possibly can." They sat together as the night deepened, two people who had beaten the odds and found not just love but true partnership. In a world that told women to be quiet and small, Harrison had told Olivia to ask anything. In a society that valued conformity over curiosity, he had encouraged her to question everything. And together, they had built a life that proved love and intellectual freedom were not opposites but complementary forces. The ranch would continue long after they were gone, becoming a place of legend among women scientists, the site where Mrs. Hayes had proven that asking questions was not just acceptable but noble. Students who had learned there would spread out across the country, carrying with them the conviction that their minds mattered and their curiosity was valuable. But for now, on this evening in 1909, Harrison and Olivia Hayes simply sat together and talked about the world they loved to explore, asking questions that led to more questions, finding joy in the endless pursuit of understanding. It was not a perfect life, but it was theirs, built on respect and love and the revolutionary belief that women's questions deserved answers. And as the moon rose over the California hills, lighting their little corner of the world with silver light, Olivia asked Harrison about the phases of the moon and their effect on animal behavior. He shared what he had observed over the years, and she added her scientific knowledge, and together they puzzled through another small mystery of the natural world. Because that was what they did, what they had always done. They asked questions together, found answers together, built understanding together. And in doing so, they had created something far more valuable than wealth or status or conventional success. They had created a partnership where both people could thrive, where curiosity was celebrated rather than condemned, where asking questions was not just permitted, but encouraged. They had proven that love did not require anyone to be less than they were. That true partnership meant supporting each other's growth rather than constraining it. Years later, when both Harrison and Olivia had passed on, their grandchildren would gather on that same porch and tell stories about the cowboy and the scientist who had loved each other so completely that they had changed the world, at least for the people who knew them. They would talk about how Harrison had seen Olivia standing in the dust, judged and rejected for her curiosity, and had chosen to help her rather than join the chorus of criticism. They would remember how he had told her she could ask him anything, and had meant it for the rest of his life. And they would carry forward the lessons their grandparents had taught. That questions matter, that curiosity is valuable, that partnerships should be built on mutual respect, and that love means creating space for the people we care about to become their fullest selves. The ranch eventually became a retreat center for women scientists, a place where researchers could come to work and think without fear of judgment. A plaque was mounted near the door of Olivia's old laboratory, inscribed with words Harrison had spoken to her so many years ago. "Ask me anything. I will never silence your questions." Because in the end, that was the legacy they left. Not just the scientific discoveries, or the students taught or the horses bred, but the simple revolutionary idea that women's minds mattered, that their questions deserved answers, and that love at its best meant encouraging rather than constraining the person you had chosen to spend your life with. Harrison and Olivia Hayes had lived that idea every single day of their marriage, proving through their actions that curiosity and love could coexist, that asking questions and being loved were not opposing choices, and that the right partner would never ask you to be less than you were meant to be. And for 33 years, from that dusty street in Yuba City to their final days together on the ranch they had built, Harrison had kept his promise. He had never silenced Olivia's questions. He had amplified them, defended them, celebrated them, and loved her more fiercely because of them. It was, by any measure, a life well lived and a love worth remembering.